force acting on a body in a liquid at rest. Here first we have to consider body in a liquid at rest. There means no movement of the liquid. Now when a body is immersed in a liquid at rest, then there are two forces which act on the body simultaneously. We already know that when a body is immersed inside a liquid, the weight of the body mg or W1 is equal to mg acts downwards. Now it acts downwards through the center of gravity of the body, through center of gravity of the body. Second force, this one is force number 1. Second force is the upthrust or the buoyancy of the liquid W2, or rather the weight of the liquid of the displaced part of solid, which acts vertically upwards. That means the buoyancy or the buoyant force is acting vertically upwards. Now the buoyant force, you can write it buoyant force acting upwards. Now buoyant force is acting upwards through the center of buoyancy. I have already discussed about this center of buoyancy in the previous video. If you have forgotten, please refer to the video. Center of buoyancy. Now weight is acting through the center of gravity of the body, and the buoyant force is acting through the center of buoyancy in the upward direction. Now we will take cases like this. If you can say that buoyancy of the liquid force is W2, that means for case 1 we can say W1 greater than W2. Now what happens when W1 is greater than W2? The apparent weight of the body, in liquid is W1 minus W2. Now for case 1, W1 greater than W2, what we can say, the body will sink, because here the net downward force is more. So from this we can also infer that the density of the solid is more than that of the liquid, because W1 we can write V1 rho 1 G. V1 is the volume of the solid, complete solid. Rho 1 is the density of the solid, and you know G is the acceleration due to gravity. And W2 is equal to V2. That means the part of liquid or the volume of the liquid displaced into rho 2 into G. The volume of the liquid displaced is V2 into the density of the liquid rho 2 into G. Now if W1 is greater than W2, then you can always say V1 greater than, rho 1 greater than rho 2. Now if the body is completely immersed, if W1 is greater than W2, that means the weight of the body is greater than the weight of the liquid displaced by the body will sink. Now here we can take V1 and V2 to be approximately equal. Here we can take the volume of the liquid displaced and the total volume of the liquid. That means the body, if we can take it to be like this, completely immersed in water, or the body is inside the water, inside the liquid, then the volume V1 is equal to V2. That means total volume of the body becomes equal to the volume of the liquid displaced. So V1 is equal to V2, therefore rho 1 greater than rho 2. Now for case 2, we can say that W1 is equal to W2. That means the weight of the body is equal to the weight of the liquid displaced by the body. Then the body will float at rest in any position in the liquid and be totally immersed in the liquid. The last point is very important. I repeat it slowly, try to understand it. These two things are equal. That means the weight of the body is equal to the weight of the liquid displaced by the body, then the body will float at rest. The body will float, but it will be completely immersed inside the liquid. That means like this, like this. It will not sink. It will float, but with its total volume inside the liquid. Now, case number 3. Case number 3. W1 is less than W2, or rather, in the sense we can say that the weight of the body is less than that of the liquid displaced by it. The body will float, but with a partial portion of the body above the liquid, like this. Here rho 1 must be less than rho 2. In this case, we can say that rho 1 is equal to rho 2. Here rho 1 less than rho 2. Therefore, when we try to understand whether the body will sink, whether the body will float by being completely immersed in the liquid or some part outside the liquid, we have to first look at the density, or rather the comparison of the densities. We have to compare the densities, and straightforwardly from the concept of this rho 1 greater than rho 2 or equal to rho 2 or less than rho 2, we can say whether the body will be in these 3 cases, any one of the cases. Now, a floating body has no apparent weight. Now, the expression for apparent weight was W1 minus W2. A floating body has no apparent weight. That means in this case, if we take the first case is a sinking case, we need not consider this case because we are stating that the body is a floating body. So floating cases are case 2 and case number 3. For case number 2, it is exactly no weight, no apparent weight, because W1 is equal to W2. That is, we can say W1 minus W2, or the apparent weight is equal to 0. But for case number 3, this is case number 2. But for case number 3, we can say W1 minus W2, the apparent weight, this is less than 0. That means we can say that if we try to force the body inside the liquid by exerting a force on it downwards and then release the force or remove our finger, the body will float upwards, will move upwards because of the force W2 minus W1. Because in this case, this is a positive quantity. W2 was the upthrust, here upthrust was more and the downthrust was less. I try to push the body inside the liquid by an external force. The body will move upwards according to W2 minus W1, because here W2 is more than W1. W1 less than W2, that means W2 is more than W1. These types of mathematical problems are there in the examination. Now we are going to deal with a very important concept, condition of equilibrium of a floating body. There are 2 conditions. One is named as the condition of flotation and another is known as the condition of equilibrium. Now, what is condition of flotation? We have already studied about these things. And the weight of the floating body must be equal to the weight of the liquid displaced. The body must float. Now, if you draw a diagram like this, this is the liquid portion, and suppose a ship is floating. If you look at from the front end, it looks somewhat like this. Now, the first condition was the condition of flotation. Condition of flotation. We have already studied about this. The second condition was the condition of equilibrium. Condition of equilibrium. That means if I draw a line like this, for the ship to remain in equilibrium, the center of gravity of the ship, so suppose the center of gravity of the ship is here, G, and the buoyant center or the center of buoyancy, that means the liquid displaced, the portion of liquid displaced had also a center of gravity point. If we take this part of the liquid to be displaced, this amount of liquid had a center of gravity point. Now when the liquid was displaced, we try to remember that point as center of buoyancy. We name it as B, center of buoyancy. And the condition of equilibrium states that the center of gravity of the body and the center of buoyancy of the liquid displaced must lie on the same line. Otherwise, the condition of equilibrium of floating body will not be satisfied. So, condition of flotation, weight of floating body equal to the weight of the liquid displaced, and condition of equilibrium, the center of gravity of the body and the center of buoyancy must lie on the same line. Now this line is known as the center line. As both the centers lie on the same line, this line is known as the center line. Now we are going to discuss about three types of equilibrium. First one is stable equilibrium, second one is unstable equilibrium, and third one is neutral equilibrium. We are going to discuss all three equilibriums for the case of flotation of a body. But before that, we have to understand the meaning of these three terms. What is a stable equilibrium? Now suppose if we keep a glass of an empty glass like this, to check whether the body is in stable equilibrium or unstable or neutral, we need to just deflect the body or give a slight amount of force to destabilize its position. So if we apply a force in this direction to destabilize the body, we will find the glass will regain back its original position, or the glass comes back to its original position. If the glass retains its original position, then it is said to be in stable equilibrium. But if we keep the glass like this with its open-ended top and apply a force, with the apply of a very small amount of force, the glass will topple. It will not regain back its original position. So it is said to be in unstable equilibrium. Now for neutral equilibrium, the glass has to be kept like this on the ground. That means the CG point of the glass, the center of gravity line of the glass or center point, when the glass rolls over, if we apply a force, the glass can only roll on the floor. That means the distance of the center of gravity from the floor is always constant. That means there will be no chance of any shift of center of gravity position for neutral equilibrium. There is a chance of shift in the center of gravity position because here the center of gravity lies downwards, and if we try to push the body, the center of gravity can regain back its original position, because the distance of the center of gravity from the ground was very less, whereas in this case the center of gravity was lying at a very higher height or higher level. So if we apply the force, this glass was in an unstable condition. So straightforward, the center of gravity position can tell us whether the body will be in stable, unstable or neutral equilibrium. If the center of gravity lies very low, then it will be in stable equilibrium. If the center of gravity point is higher, then it will be in unstable. And if there is no shift in center of gravity position, even if a force is applied, then this is said to be in neutral equilibrium. Now we move from these three types of equilibrium. We try to instill the concept in the flotation of bodies. But before that, we have to understand what the term metacenter means. Now, if there is a body floating in the liquid, I had already said the center of gravity position of the body. This is the center of gravity or the center of buoyancy position. Now a single line can be drawn through it, which is known as the line of okay. See, this is a line. This line can be called as the center line. Now, if we tilt the body, because to test which type of equilibrium the body is in, we have to tilt the body, apply a force. Now, after tilting the body, if the position of the body is like this, the original center line was like this, and the original buoyancy position or this point was here. Now if I shift the body or tilt the body, this point will move in this direction, because the part of the liquid displaced has more volume on the right hand side, so the shift of the center of buoyancy position will be towards the right. Now if we draw another straight line through the center of gravity and the metacenter, sorry, this point was the center of buoyancy. Now if we draw a line perpendicular or straightforward, the intersection of this line and the original center line is known as the metacenter. So by definition we can say, in this tilted position of a floating body, the point at which the vertical line drawn through the center of buoyancy, such as let us now it be B1, so B1, now position is B2, center of buoyancy B1 cuts the line, suppose it be AB, cuts the line AB is called the metacenter of the body. So buoyancy center has shifted from B1 to position B2. We draw a vertical line, this vertical line intersecting with the center line, and the point of intersection is known as the metacenter. So we first start with the diagram of stable equilibrium. Whatever I had drawn here to make you understand the concept of metacenter was the diagram for the stable equilibrium. Let me draw once more. The first position of this one should be like this. This was the original line AB, or the center line. Center of gravity of the body named as G, and let this be point B1, or the center of buoyancy. Now after that I tilt the body. Original line was like this. The center of gravity of the body was here, G. First center of buoyancy was B1 here. Now the buoyancy center will be shifted towards the right. Let this be the new position of center of buoyancy B2. We draw a straight line. Or rather a vertical line like this. Now the point of intersection of the vertical line with the original AB line, or rather the center line, this point is known as the metacenter, as I've already discussed. Now the weight of the body acts downwards along this line through the center of gravity of the body, vertically downwards. Now this center of buoyancy is pushing the body in the upward direction. So we have a force like this downwards, we have a force like this upwards. These two forces make up a torque or couple, which makes the body to move or rotate in the anti-clockwise direction. If the body rotates in the anti-clockwise direction, the body will regain back its original position. So the metacenter is very high, so the body will be in stable equilibrium. For unstable equilibrium, what happens? For unstable equilibrium, we take body shape like this. We have to change the shape of the body, because this kind of bodies generally have stable equilibrium. if the length of the body is more than its width, suppose the first instance we take the body to be the center line like this, center of gravity of the body was here, suppose G, the first buoyancy center B1 like this. Now if we tilt this body, what happens? Original center line, original G, original B. Now the shift of this center position, so this will be B1, this was G. Now if we tilt the body, the center line AB like this, the center of buoyancy point will shift here, B2. Now again the same concept, if we draw this, if we draw a vertical line through this center of new center of buoyancy vertically upwards, it cuts this original AB or center line at this point. So this is known as the metacenter M. But the difference between these two diagrams was that the metacenter was lying above the center of gravity of the original body. The body was in stable equilibrium, but here the metacenter lie at a position below the center of gravity. Now whenever this thing happens, the body will not regain back its original position. Because why? Now see, the weight of the body is acting downwards through this point G, so we have downward force is in this direction and the upward force is in this direction. So the body will rotate in a clockwise manner. The body is going to rotate in a clockwise manner and the body will be tilted further and the body falls down. Now the third one is the neutral equilibrium. Now this type of equilibrium occurs in bodies which have a spherical shape, bodies of this kind of shape. Okay, the first line like this, center of gravity point at the center of buoyancy B1, initial position. Now if we can take into consideration a stick being pierced into the sphere and we try to bend the sphere or bring the sphere or rotate the sphere in this clockwise direction. So if the sphere was like this, the original line was like this. Now the center of position B1, the center of gravity point B1, the position of buoyancy, let us suppose it shifted in this fashion. This was the original position of B1 and this is B2. Now if we draw a line from B2 in this direction, now what happens? The line intersects the previous line AB. This was the previous line AB. This is the new line. So this line intersects the original or the old line AB at point G. Here G and metacenter coincides. That means in this case, what happens? The center of gravity of the body coincides with the metacenter of the body. In any position, if we can shift this sphere, we will find this condition is satisfied. So when center of gravity of the body coincides with the metacenter, then we say the body to be in neutral equilibrium, and only this kind of spherical shaped bodies are in neutral equilibrium. Now another important concept, pressure difference and buoyant force in a liquid of a uniformly accelerated container filled with liquid. Now the mathematical expressions used so far for the buoyant force acting on a body immersed in a liquid, it holds true for any liquid at rest. Now, however, those quantities are to be modified for a uniformly accelerated container. uniformly accelerated container filled with the liquid. Now, if you take the first case to be in a moving lift, now this case says that when a lift with a liquid filled container moves upwards with an acceleration a, let us suppose this to be the container, this is filled with liquid, this container moves up with an acceleration a inside a lift. That means when a lift with a liquid filled container moves upwards with an acceleration a. First case is the difference in pressure. Now we can imagine a liquid column. We can imagine a liquid column like this here, of height h and area of cross section a, of height h and area of cross section h inside the lift. Now, if the density of the liquid is rho, density of liquid is rho, so mass of liquid column, mass of this liquid column will be equal to m equal to h into a. Now h into a gives the volume, and volume into density gives mass. Now we try to understand the different forces acting, or exerted on the liquid column. The first is P1 is the pressure on the upper surface of the liquid column. This is the upper surface, so P1 is the pressure on the upper surface. So the thrust on upper surface must be equal to F1 is equal to P1 into A. P1 is the pressure acting on the top surface. The area of cross section was A. So thrust on the upper surface, F1 is equal to P1A. Similarly, if P2 is the pressure at the bottom surface or the lower surface of the liquid, then thrust on lower surface F2 is equal to P2A. The third is the weight of the liquid column. Weight of liquid column, it was mg is equal to, what was m? H a rho. So H a rho g. This force is acting vertically downwards. Now the first one was acting vertically downwards, the second one was acting vertically upwards, the buoyant force, and the third one, the weight, is acting downwards. Therefore, if you can construct an equation of motion, taking into consideration the direction of the forces acting, that is F2 minus F1. F2 is acting upwards and F1 is acting downwards, minus mg. So upward force subtracted part is the forces acting downwards, is equal to ma. Now why did I do this? Why did I subtract the force that was acting upwards from F2 minus of F1 plus mg? Now F1 plus mg, both forces acting downwards. Now why did I do this? We had already learned from the lift equation that when the lift moves up, we write the equation as r minus mg is equal to ma. We have written a very similar equation to that equation. Now reaction force of the r is F2 minus F1 minus mg is equal to ma. So P2a minus P1a, we take mg onto the right hand side, becomes plus mg. Take m common from here, a plus g, and take a common from here, P2 minus P1 into a. We replace the value of m from here, HA rho, A plus G, P2 minus P1 into A. So from both sides, the area of cross section value gets cancelled. So P2 minus P1 is equal to H rho A plus G. Now H rho G plus H rho A. This term was already present in the previous equation. Difference of pressure was equal to H rho G when the container was at rest. But here, as the lift is moving upwards, another pressure term gets added to it, that is H rho into A, or the acceleration of the lift, where A is the acceleration of the lift. So we can say that the pressure or the difference in pressure increases by H rho A. So we can write difference in pressure increases by H rho A. Now if we take this to be case number 1, we can write case number 2 as lift moving downwards with an acceleration A. Lift moving downwards with an acceleration A. Now P2 minus P1, we can straightforward write the equation without solving it, that is H rho G minus H rho A. Similar types of equation we have already studied about this types of equation in the previous case. I think H rho gets common, so H rho into G minus A. So P2 minus P1 is equal to H rho into G minus A. Buoyant force was m into G minus A. Now when the lift is with the liquid filled container, it moves downwards freely. So the case number 3 we can take. Case number 3, lift moves downwards freely. If the lift with the liquid container moves downwards freely, that means free fall, or rather A is equal to G. What happens? A is equal to G. So P2 minus P1, if A is equal to G, that means this term becomes 0, so equal to 0. Therefore P2 is equal to P1. Now case number 4, when the lift to the liquid container is at rest or moves up and down with uniform speed. Now what happens there? Case number 4 we can write very easy, because there is no acceleration, A is equal to 0, or rather a very uniform movement, uniform speed movement. So here we can write uniform speed. Here R is equal to, or rather P2 minus P1 is equal to H rho G. So the term H rho A is eliminated because A becomes equal to 0. Now free surface in a liquid filled container, moving horizontally with uniform acceleration. Liquid container is moving with an acceleration, say A, the value of acceleration is A. Now what happens to the free surface? The free surface cannot remain horizontal, because we all know that if we move this body with an acceleration of A in the right direction, there will be a pseudo force acting on the water or the liquid inside the container. So the liquid level will be like this. It will not be horizontal, but will be at an angle of theta. So if you take a horizontal cylinder of length L, So let the cylinder be here. So this is point A, suppose this is point B. The ends of the cylinder has been named as A and B. So a horizontal cylinder of length L, horizontal cylinder, a horizontal cylinder of length L and cross sectional area alpha, and alpha is imagined inside the liquid. This is not the base level, it is somewhat above the base level. So you have taken a horizontal cylinder of length L and cross section area alpha. Now the density of liquid is take it to be rho, density of liquid, we take it to be rho. So mass of the liquid cylinder, mass of liquid cylinder, the pink color cylinder that you have taken, must be equal to m into L alpha rho. L alpha gives the volume, L is the length, alpha is the cross section area, gives the volume, multiplication of these factors, and with density it gives the mass. Now let the liquid exert pressures P and PB respectively at the two ends. The liquid exerts pressure PA and PB respectively at the two ends of the cylinder. So we can write here liquid exerts pressure PA and PB at the two ends A and B, two ends A and B of the cylinder. Now the equation of motion can be written like this. The equation of motion can be written in this fashion. Motion of liquid cylinder, rather nothing else, liquid cylinder. Now what should be the equation? PA into alpha minus PB into alpha. That means they have taken the pressure PA to be high and pressure PB to be low. So PA alpha minus PB alpha is equal to MA. Pressure into area of cross section gives the force. And when force, difference of two forces means a force. The force can be equated with mass into acceleration due to gravity. We take alpha from here, PA minus PB, MA. Now what is M? We have taken the length of the cylinder to be L. As I have already said, the length of the cylinder is L. So L into alpha gives the volume into rho, the density of the liquid, into A, alpha PA minus PB. So alpha gets cancelled from both sides. So PA minus PB, L rho A, L rho A. So the equation of motion of the liquid cylinder is P2 minus P1, sorry, PA minus PB is equal to L rho A. Now pressure at the 2 points the same horizontal, pressure at the 2 points on the same horizontal line inside the liquid filled container moving horizontally with uniform acceleration, they are not the same. The pressure are not the same, P and PB. Now due to the absence of any vertical acceleration of the container, the pressure at any point inside the liquid is similar to that in the case of liquid at rest. But in this case, the free surface of the liquid does not remain horizontal. Free surface will not remain horizontal. Suppose the free surface and mixed angle theta with the horizontal. Let us take it to be theta. This liquid level is not horizontal. We take this angle to be theta. Now what happens? We can write PA is equal to H1 rho, PB is equal to H2, sorry, it will be G here. H1 rho G, PB is equal to H2 rho G. Now H1 rho G minus H2 rho G, it becomes equal to L alpha rho, or H2 minus H1, from both sides rho will get cancelled. H2 minus H1 by L is equal to A by G. Therefore tan theta, now why did I call this tan theta? H2 minus H1. Now suppose this is height H1, this is height H2. So H2, sorry, I think I made a mistake, H2 H1. So height H2 is more than that of H1. Difference of these two heights is H2 minus H1. This is the perpendicular and the base is L. So H2 minus H1 by L gives the value of tan theta. So tan theta is equal to A by G, or theta is equal to tan inverse of A by G.